Thank you very much indeed, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you. I think this is the second time that I've spoken at this conference, so I don't think the weather was quite as good as the last time I was here, but so things are definitely improving. We've heard a lot, I think, so far this afternoon about the different levels of cybersecurity. So we've looked at it perhaps at a mega trend level, a more sort of structural, governmental level. I want to focus in the next few minutes just on talking about it from an organisational standpoint. So I want to really home in on some of the challenges that organisations face, and I want to offer up as well some potential solutions that are taken from not me having dreamt them up, I have to come clean, from our membership, which is, as you heard, a global membership stretching from New Zealand right the way across to the Americas, made up of primarily the Fortune and the Forbes companies, all concerned about issues of information security and cyber risk and cyber security management. So if you like what I'm saying, then of course they're my ideas. If you don't, then it's the membership, and what can I do? So every organisation understands it's facing challenges today. What are those particular challenges? Well, if I were to pull out four in particular that relate to 2017, the sorts of things that are keeping our members up at night, the first would have to be the Internet of Things. What do I mean by that? It operates at a number of different levels, doesn't it? It's the Apple Watch. It's manufacturing plants. I could tell you about an ISF member whose manufacturing plant suddenly burst into life during a shutdown because somebody hadn't done the right thing, and one of the devices suddenly thought that because a certain button had been pressed, it was due for it to come to life. Anybody who works in a manufacturing environment knows how dangerous that can be. So the Internet of Things, I think, is becoming very much all-pervasive. We don't frankly know how to deal with it. Let's be realistic, we've got no clue. Why? Because most of those devices were never designed with security in mind. Never at all. I remember having conversations when smart metering was being talked about the level of security associated with that. I got blank stares. Security for people implementing smart meters is all about where is the meter going to be located. I remember a water company saying to me, Steve, the reality of security as far as a smart meter is concerned is we don't want to put it next to the shower. Gaining access to the premise is the key challenge. So Internet of Things is up there. The second is the cyber criminal. I think 2 years ago I described cybercrime as being entrepreneurial businesses. Today, well, they've matured. They're no longer startups. They are large corporations. They are very, very effective at communicating globally. They share, they collaborate. We heard a lot about collaboration, the need for it. We can take some lessons, certainly, from the way in which cyber criminals do that. They're very happy to outsource. If you have a skill in a certain part of the world, no problem at all. They're happy to commoditize in terms of the way in which they'll provide you with services. So cybercrime has taken a quantum leap, and we should expect it to do so. The impact it will have on organizations means we have to be prepared. The third element that is keeping people up at night is obviously that of regulation. Not so much GDPR, although there is a certain amount of work associated with that. More for multinationals and certainly across our membership, it's about the difference in standards, the difference in regulation. And I think a lot of organizations have tended to take a compliance and standards-based approach. I could talk about a bank who pretty regularly every year will tell me about the breaches that they've had, and in the same breath tell me that they're also compliant. Compliance, and in the main government regulation, is normally based on historical precedent. Cyber, unfortunately, is all about tomorrow and the changes it is going to make. So if you adopt a compliance and a standards-based approach only, you will be at a disadvantage. And the final piece is people, us, the likes of you and I. We do strange things, don't we, with our technology. People at the back there who are on their smartphones. Not sure whether they're making notes or whether they're doing some shopping. They're probably doing both, is the reality. And from a security standpoint, we need to understand that, we need to be aware of it, and we need to adapt our policies, our processes, and our procedures to cater for that. It is no good taking an approach akin to King Canute and standing on the beach and telling the sea not to come in. It simply won't work. So if those are the challenges that organizations are facing, what is it that organizations can do about it? How do you, as a cyber professional, deal with, I think the term was, moving away from speaking dolphin? How do you do that? Well, most boards around the world that I talk to are very aware of cyber issues. But as I say, they come at it from the issue being that of compliance. Compliance, and I used to work for Ernst & Young, so I'm allowed to say this, compliance is a cost. If you're in the cost bucket, then the business will look at how to reduce you. There is no question. That is the nature of it. So we need to get out of the cost bucket and we need to get into the investment bucket. That means we have to be looking at how we can implement cyber controls and cyber processes in a way that support the growth of our businesses, in a way that the board can understand, and that means we have to be talking about the impact of cyber on brand, on trust, and on the direction that our companies wish to go. Shareholder value, if you like. To do that, we need to be speaking the language of the business. Very often that happens to be the language of risk. If we can relate cyber to risk, then we're in with something of a chance. Furthermore, if we can continue to update that in the light of emerging threats, along the lines of the ones that I was just referring to, then we stand a chance of remaining current. Finally, we can't do it alone. We have to collaborate. There's been talk of certainly of how we collaborate across industry, across governments. I'd like to bring it a little bit closer to home. There are very few organizations that I work with around the world that I would class as A star in terms of collaborating internally. How many of you, when you see the cyber guy coming to the water cooler or the coffee machine, suddenly have a phone call to make or need to go in an opposite direction? Well, be honest, probably most of you. I know I do. But the reality is that unless we can embed cyber hygiene, washing your hands or whatever you want to call it, from the top of the organization, the boardroom, right the way down to the guy you'd rather not speak to at the water cooler and everybody else across the enterprise, we're always going to be fighting a losing battle. So the way that we have to do it is by building together our resilience teams and our cyber teams across the enterprise. Yes, there needs to be a champion in the boardroom. Yes, there needs to be representatives from every element of the organization, from HR, from legal, from the business units. We need to be looking at how we can embed cyber best practice into the way in which we go about doing business, and we need to start doing it today. If we can do that, then we can move on to having the luxury of putting in place a cyber resilience program that will consist of governance and partnering, that will consist of assessing situational awareness, that will look at our ability to respond effectively. But unless we actually start with some of those basic ground rules, unfortunately, the bad guys will always get the march on us. So that's the message that I have for you. Thank you very much indeed for listening. I hope you found that to be useful, and look forward to the rest of the program. Thank you.